Hi, ladies and gentlemen, Chris of the Polish Geek welcomes you to another video, and a very different type of video because I'm gonna discuss one of my favorite movies of all time, Kingdom of Heaven. The director's cut. Screw the theatrical version, but I already gave this movie a whole you should be watching treatment. But this is a quite different type of video, another video in the opinion piece series, and well, I did say that those videos aren't really gonna be about things like politics, religion, unless it relates to a movie or something like that, which I think very much does in case of Kingdom of Heaven. And Kingdom of Heaven has a reputation among plenty of Christians as being blatantly anti-Christian, but I could not disagree more. I'm Roman Catholic, and first we have to say, I actually intended to do this video like in 2 or 3 months, but I decided that now is actually a better time than ever with Pope Francis dead, because let's pray for his soul first. But Pope Francis was a very divisive pope, to say the least. Like, I personally wish he got far less involved in world politics, but at least when it comes to theology, I actually thought he was pretty good. Like, I mean, the problem is, media frequently pulls his words out of context, and while he was far from the best pope, he was also far from one of the worst. I actually think he was a quite good pope in many ways, although my favorite will always be John Paul II. But I personally thought Pope Francis was actually a pretty good pope, even though if I didn't agree with all the things he's done. But let's just pray that Conclave will elect someone worthy of the title of the Holy Father as the Pope. But we are probably going off a lot on a tangent, because again, this channel isn't really about religion, and this will be like one of the last religious videos I make here. But let's get back to the point of why I don't think Kingdom of Heaven is anti-Christian. Quite the opposite. It's actually one of the movies that actually speaks very much to my faith, actually, and I will explain why. However, I do want you to be aware of one very, very important thing, which is kind of a general idea of the opinion piece videos in general, but this is a very important thing, because if you are already willing to like burn me to the ground in the comments, like roast me and things like that, then I just want you to be aware the purpose of this video is not to change your mind. If you do feel the movie is very anti-Christian, then I respect your opinion, like, and I'm not gonna argue with you. Like, I highly respect your opinion and I understand where you're coming from, but the purpose of this video is to tell you why I personally don't find it anti-Christian. Again, it's not to change your mind, so if you strongly disagree with me, feel free, and you can even let me know in the comments of why you personally disagree with me. And as long as you're being respectful, then I'm all willing to have a conversation with you. But if there's gonna be any disrespect or insults, then I'm gonna delete your comments. Again, I highly respect your opinion if you disagree with me, and I'm all willing to hear your opinion out. Just be respectful. That's all I'm asking. Because again, the purpose of this video is not to change your mind. And now, let's get on of why I don't consider Kingdom of Heaven anti-Christian. Quite the opposite. It's actually one of the movies that very much speaks to my faith, and I often watch it specifically because of that, actually. We all know that Kingdom of Heaven is a movie during the Crusades, set in between the Second Crusade and the Third Crusade, mostly in Jerusalem, with the main character being Balian of Ibelin. And people frequently say online and all that it's very much like whitewashes the Saracens, it completely blackwashes the Crusaders, and that the movie basically implies that Saracens were like the victims of the Crusades and the Crusaders were the bad guys, yada yada yada. That's the common opinion you'll hear, but I couldn't disagree more. I actually think that the movie very much, and that's actually one of my favorite things about the movie, that the movie very much actually attempts to portray that there are crazy fanatics on both sides, which is how it really was in real history, because although people don't like accepting that, history, or politics for that matter, modern politics for that matter, is not as black and white as people make it out to be. Quite the opposite. Like, there's a lot of nuance and gray area in history that people just cannot accept. And then you'd probably give me a counter argument, oh, but the movie portrays like Christians as both good and bad, while Muslims mostly good. But nope, that isn't the case at all. The reason we see plenty of fanatics on the Christian side but not that many on the Muslim side is because the movie mostly focuses on the Christians in the first place. Like, the only really named Muslim character is Salah ad-Din, who actually was pretty noble by the standards of medieval leaders in general. Some people argue he was slightly whitewashed because of when he takes over Jerusalem, he just lets everyone go, even though the truth is he did actually sell some into slavery, but that's something you gotta look past. Like, Reynald de Chatillon is actually portrayed as very cruel in the movie, but he was actually far worse in real life. Like, Reynald de Chatillon was actually very much toned down for the movie. So if you're gonna argue that how the movie portrays Reynald de Chatillon, this is actually pretty historically accurate. As I said, if anything, he was actually toned down, actually. But again, the reason the movie mostly shows fanatics on the Christian side is because Christians is who the movie really focuses on. Like, as I said, the only named Muslim character is Salah ad-Din. Like, we barely really see any of the Salah ad-Din court and all that, but he does have an advisor who does actually seem pretty fanatical, but the problem is that advisor barely gets screen time. He just mostly stands next to Salah ad-Din, but we can infer that when Salah ad-Din and his court are meeting, he's probably just as fanatical as Reynald de Chatillon and Guy de Lusignan. It's just that he isn't the leader, so he doesn't really have much say in the matter. I guess you can argue that the only way in which he's slightly better is that he isn't willing to betray his leader, but oh well. And even during the final battle, a pretty spectacular final battle, I'll give it that, like one of my favorite battles in movie history, but even during the final battle, it's actually Salah ad-Din and the Saracens who are the aggressors and are besieging the city of Jerusalem. And sure, you can argue that Reynald de Chatillon and Guy de Lusignan were the ones that actually provoked them to start this war, and this is somewhat true, but at this point, Reynald de Chatillon is dead, his entire army is annihilated, and Guy de Lusignan is captured prisoner, so it's not like Salah ad-Din really has a lot of reason for besieging the city, and his army actually seems pretty fanatical and mostly just kept in check by Salah ad-Din, and the mullah that advising him, whom I already talked about, especially since seems fanatical, he even at one point actually gloats about killing Christian prisoners. So, in all honesty, we can probably infer that in Salah ad-Din's court it doesn't get shown much. There are plenty of fanatics as well. As I said, Salah ad-Din is really the only named Muslim character, and even then, he mostly shows up when he interacts with the Christian characters, because the movie mostly focuses on the Christian side of the whole conflict. Like, as I said, Salah ad-Din's advisor pretty much seems like a Saracen equivalent of Reynald de Chatillon and Guy de Lusignan. He just isn't really shown much, because again, the movie doesn't focus really much on Salah ad-Din's court in general. And another problem I see is people say that Knights Templar are portrayed as pretty fanatical, which is not how they were in history. And I might not argue with that. This is also somewhat true, but that seems to be really part of the bigger problem in Hollywood in general. That Hollywood seems to really, in general, conflate Templars and Crusaders as the same thing, even though they very much were not the same thing. Yes, the Templars were one of the holy orders created in the Holy Land to protect the pilgrims, but they were decidedly not Crusaders. The Crusaders was a much broader term, and in general referred to the European armies who were crusading into Jerusalem in the first place. Like, Reynald de Chatillon and Guy de Lusignan are shown wearing Templar armor, even though they were in Templars and they decidedly would not be allowed to wear it in real life. Now I'll, on the other hand, have to talk about possibly my favorite character in the whole movie, the Knight Hospitaller, who on the other hand is literally the most noble character in the movie, and also even has some of my favorite quotes in all of fiction. As a Roman Catholic, those are some of the most inspirational quotes that very much contribute to my faith, actually.
Holiness is in right action and courage on behalf of those who cannot defend themselves. And goodness, what God desires is here and here. And what you decide to do every day, you will be a good man.
And there are lots of fans that actually subscribe to the fan theory that he's an angel, and I'm one of them. I actually really love the idea. I call it, he's an angel in human form on Earth. And also, the director's Scott version, which is really the only version I think should be watched anyway, but it also features a sympathetic bishop at the very beginning in France, and while in the theatrical version Balian gets into conflict with a priest who's a real jerk, and I would probably not argue if you argue that's blatantly anti-Christian if you only see the theatrical version, but in the director's cut, it's revealed by the bishop that that priest, in addition to being Balian's half-brother, he's also very much a black sheep, sort of like Judas, and his actions were very much anti-Christian and completely contradictory to God's and bishop's will, for that matter. And now that we're on that subject, let's also address the character of Balian of Ibelin, who's really the protagonist and main character of the movie, but that's actually another thing that in the theatrical version, admittedly, it probably could be totally seen as blatantly anti-Catholic, but again, it's thankfully very well fixed in the director's cut, because the character of Balian of Ibelin is kind of struggling with his faith, and in the theatrical version he does come across kind of as this non-religious secular guy who didn't really fit in the medieval times anyway, but thankfully, on the other hand, in the director's cut, it's shown that he very much struggles with his faith, and it's completely understandable and makes sense why. And I also find it very relatable, because I admit, as a Catholic, I sometimes struggle with my faith, and I think it's completely okay to sometimes have doubts about God's existence. I'm not hiding, I do have sometimes, although that's very personal, so I'm not talking about it anymore. This is very, very personal, and we are going off on a tangent, but in the director's cut, it's actually revealed that that aforementioned priest is Balian's half-brother, as I already said, and that he very much manipulated Balian's wife into committing suicide and then mocked Balian that she's in hell. So it would make perfect sense for Balian to harden his heart and kind of close off his faith for a while. And then his journey through faith and all that is actually one of my favorite plot points and story arcs in the whole movie, and I find it so relatable. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is my opinion of why I don't find Kingdom of Heaven anti-Catholic. But again, the purpose of this video is not to make you agree with me or even convince you otherwise. It's just to express my personal opinion of why I personally don't feel this way. But if you disagree with me, I'm open to hearing your dissenting opinion, and feel free to let me know in the comments of why you disagree. Or if you do agree, then feel free to comment and let me know as well. But as I said, the only thing I'm asking, no hate or no disrespectful comments, please. Again, feel free to disagree. I'm all ears and willing to hear out your opinion. Just be nice and respectful. That's all I'm asking. But now also, let's again pray for Pope Francis' soul, and that whoever they pick next will be worthy to lead the title of the Holy Father. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out this video, and this will be probably the last religious video I ever make on this channel, because again, the purpose of this channel is not religion, quite the opposite. I'm actually trying to avoid controversial subject at any cost necessary, unless politics is shoved stupidly into the movie like it is a lot in modern times. I'll have to call it out then, but other than that, again, politics and religion are not really the purpose of this channel, so this is probably one of the last religious videos I ever make. Although I am planning someday to do a similar video with the Netflix Castlevania of why I don't feel this is anti-Christian. I did address it already a couple of times, but for now this will be the last religious video I ever make, and please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another far less controversial video. Talk to you then, bye!